Today we're going to talk about the White River Watershed National Blueway. Where it is, who started it, what the consequences may be, and how we can stop it. This is a slide showing the White River Watershed National Blueway. Basically it goes from the Arkansas-Missouri border around Rogers area and Seligman, goes up north to Monette, over east through Springfield, on east through Marshfield, down south and east towards Salem, then up and northeast towards near Farmington, on down southeast along the Missouri border towards the Boot Heel at a town called Dexter, which is about 20 miles east of Poplar Bluff, then on down to Malden, and then back across the Arkansas border all the way down into Arkansas along the Cache River watershed along the east, through Jonesboro, along down that watershed area until it comes to the Mississippi River, then further south until the confluence of the Arkansas and Mississippi River. Then the boundary comes back up east of Little Rock, north towards Conway and on up to Heber Springs in the Greers Ferry area, over to Fayetteville, then back up to Rogers again. This area encompasses 17.8 million acres and includes 60 counties, 21 in Missouri and 39 in Arkansas. The counties in Missouri that are affected: Berry, Christian, Douglas, Greene, Howell, Lawrence, Ozark, Stone, Taney, Texas, Webster, Wright, Oregon, Ripley, Butler, Wayne, Madison, Iron, Reynolds, Shannon, and Dent. It started when President Obama announced the America's Great Outdoors Initiative in 2010. In May of 2012, Secretary Ken Alazar of the Interior Department issued Secretary's Order 3321 establishing the National Blueway System. In January of 2013, a Memorandum of Understanding establishing the White River Watershed National Blueway was signed between the Department of Interior, Agriculture, and the Army. The purpose was to form collaborative efforts to work together as partners to accomplish shared conservation, restoration, and sustainable economic objectives. Called on the collaborative approach to conserving rivers and other waters, land, and water management strategies at the watershed level, integrated water resources management techniques with stakeholder-driven watershed-based partnership. These are public-private partnerships. And a note: non-navigable rivers fall under state jurisdiction, not the federal government. A little background out of the Memorandum of Understanding. A National Blueway employs integrated land and water management to conserve and restore a river from its headwaters to its mouth and across its entire watershed. Why? To address challenges posed by changing climate. It facilitates grassroots stewardship, local leadership, and communities and organizations to adaptively manage by a diverse stakeholder partnership. Broad objectives: conserving, protecting, and enhancing the natural diversity of fish, wildlife species, and the ecosystems they depend upon. Restoring and maintaining the chemical, physical, and biological integrity of the nation's waters. Integrating and adaptively managing agriculture and working lands and waters. Providing opportunities for sustainable economic opportunities to the extent compatible with agency missions, goals, objectives, and priorities. When you see anything that says sustainable, you'll know that your hackles ought to go up, because that is the problem. And notice they talk about working lands and waters. Those aren't public lands, those are our lands. They want to promote integrated and adaptive land and water management, including working lands and waters, more natural riverine flows, functions, and aquatic species passage. They may want to tear down dams to do that. They want to promote, integrate connectivity of habitat. Why? To address the effects of climate and land use changes. There we go, climate change coming into these implementation strategies of the National Blueway system. Diverse stakeholder partnerships of public and private organizations. When they mention that, they're not talking about elected officials and landowners. They left us out of that. The Memorandum of Understandings can outline watershed-specific objectives, strategies, and desired outcomes for the river and watershed as an integrated land and water management system. This is the news release from Little Rock, January 9th, when they signed this Blueway Memorandum of Understanding. The Blueway designation recognizes strong, diverse partnerships are the best way to address the modern-day threats, which they do not define. River users and river lovers of all stripes have banded together. I guess our stripes were wrong, because they didn't ask us about this. Designation as a national blueway reflects the Obama administration's continued commitment to the protection of public and working lands. Blueway was nominated for this designation by 26 diverse stakeholder groups, including the federal partners from the Army Corps of Engineers, Department of Agriculture and Interior. No elected officials are on this list, not to mention the landowners. This is a list of the support organizations. The state and local governments listed on the left there. Notice that the only Missouri representation was through the Missouri Department of Conservation. On the non-governmental side, the Nature Conservative has units within Missouri and Arkansas. If you look at Arkansas Canoe Club, these are part of the guys who nominated this area, and they're one of the stakeholders, but you are not. So does this sound right to you? Unelected bureaucrats and environmental groups nominated and designated 17.8 million acres of public and private lands and waters so they can integrate and adaptively manage it all, without allowing over 1 million inhabitants or their elected officials prior knowledge or input to these plans. This is an article from Michael S. Kaufman, PhD, Separating People from Their Water. By executive order, President Clinton in 1996 established the Council on Sustainable Development. Again, there's that word sustainable. Program spawned included the American Heritage Rivers Initiative and the Clean Water Initiative, both implemented through the executive order, never voted upon by the Congress. The Clean Water Initiative called for obliterating 5,000 miles of roads each year on federal land and setting aside 2 million miles of conservation buffers on agricultural lands. Agricultural lands are private lands. The government doesn't do anything of that. One consequence, forest fires were greatly magnified because the firefighters couldn't get their equipment because the roads had been closed. The Stream Corridor Plan from the Department of Agriculture called for a corridor equal to the 100-year floodplain for a river in width. And this contains some of the most productive land in America. Court challenges forced the federal agencies to back down when they realized they had no legal authority to force private citizens to obey their arbitrary and capricious regulations. But how much were their legal fees? These heritage rivers, this program uses non-elected authorities, and while no effort is presently underway to extend this jurisdiction to watersheds, the option remains for future bureaucrats to gradually extend their jurisdiction. This was from the article in 2004. Fast forward to 2012, and the National Blueway system is doing just that. What is unsustainable? Grazing of livestock, plowing of soil, building fences, industry, single-family homes, paved and tarred roads, logging activities, dams and reservoirs, power line construction, and economic systems that fail to set proper value on the environment. Who says what's proper? Not in a capitalist system. This is from the UN Biodiversity Assessment Report. What are the adverse effects going to be? Farmers and ranchers will be limited on tilling of their soil, cutting or trimming trees or vegetation, irrigating their land, using chemicals, fertilizers, pesticides, runoff from their fields and pastures, limits on livestock and grazing, use of stream or river water, regulations, restrictions, and fines with no recourse, of course, limiting profitability. Even small acreages could be affected too. If the EPA does its 180-foot setback from all surface water source, even a small pond can take up a lot of land that people would not be able to touch or have livestock grazing around. Digging or altering ponds could be a problem. Fertilizing yards with weed killers, pesticides, etc. Collection of rainwater could be out. Use of your own well water, home additions, sale of your property, even portions of it. Restrictions even on small animals and livestock. This Blueway will adversely affect both ranchers and farmers as well as the businesses that support them. Feed and hardware stores, tack shops and farriers, real estate people, co-ops, farm equipment dealers and maintenance shops, large animal veterinarians, healthcare providers and hospitals, restaurants, fuel suppliers, everything. Everything that supports the community supports the ranchers and the farmers. If the farmers and ranchers and rural landowners cannot function freely, rural and small towns in Missouri and Arkansas will ultimately dry up. This is one of the historical effects on property owners by some of these unelected bureaucrats. In California, the Fish and Game Commission ruled in favor of the longfin and delta smelt, just a small minnow, over the livelihoods of 60,000 workers and landowners in California's San Joaquin Valley, considered the richest and most productive farmland in the nation. The environmentalists shut off the water pumps, prohibiting irrigation of their fields. Overnight, 60,000 workers were unemployed. Many over the years were forced into bankruptcy. This isn't the first time the Ozarks have been under attack. In '96, President Clinton put much of the same land in Arkansas and Missouri designated as the man in the biosphere. Documents attained from the National Park Service showed that state and federal agencies were working with the Nature Conservancy and other environmental activist groups to acquire large amounts of land for preservation, certain of some of it to be privately owned. The ban in biosphere was soundly rejected when informed citizens pressured Arkansas Governor Huckabee to stop that project. Now they've changed the name, and it's called the National Blueway System. This isn't the first time for the Obama administration either. The Wildlands Project, supported by the same Nature Conservancy, was dreamed up by the same Ken Salazar, bypassing the same Congress by issuing another executive order, or secretary's order. They tried to grab huge land tracts of land, restricting or denying access for people. It was so egregious that it brought some action from Congress, when the Western Caucus sent a letter to the Secretary of the Interior. These are excerpts from that letter. We are contacting you regarding disturbing trends of bypassing Congress and the public in establishing new federal designations and policies. We have serious reservations of the wildlands designation through a secretarial order. It was highly controversial, lacked transparency, and was legally questionable. On August 2012, they expressed concerns regarding the BLM, Bureau of Land Management manuals, which mirrored the same rejected policies of Wildlands Secretarial Order. They were crafted without public notice. They asked them to withdraw these manuals and set up a briefing for them. The manuals were not withdrawn, nor was the briefing request even acknowledged by your department. The Congress Western Caucus went on to say, May 24th of last year, you signed Secretarial Order 3321 establishing the National Blueway System, a new national emphasis of a headwaters-to-mouth approach to river management, and create a mechanism to encourage stakeholders to integrate their land and water stewardship efforts by adopting a watershed approach. The order authorizes the establishment of an intra-agency National Blueways Committee to provide leadership, direction, and coordination. Despite the order stating that nothing in this order intended to be the basis for the exercise of any new regulatory authority, given the lack of transparency by Interior to date, this disclaimer is of little comfort to communities that will be negatively impacted by a Blueway's designation. In fact, the order specifically injects federal agency policies and programs into the management. Bureaus shall endeavor to align the execution of agency plans and implementation of agency programs to protect, restore, and enhance the natural, cultural, and/or recreational resources associated with the National Blueways. Again, the Congress goes on to say, it appears that any watershed in the United States could be designated without any vote in Congress and without proper public notice. The order states the Secretary may designate the river and its associated watershed as a national blueway. Water is the lifeblood of our communities, Congress says. It should be managed for the benefit of the community in a transparent fashion. Non-navigable water is managed by the states and not the federal government. Any designation that attempts to manage the non-navigable headwaters of many of our nation's rivers would be a usurpation of state authority. Congress urged Secretary Salazar to immediately withdraw the secretarial order, bring proposals to Congress that are creating new land and water designations so that we may consider them through the normal committee process and with public transparency. That wraps up what the Congress thinks of the National Blueway system. Now, how can we stop this? The Missouri State Legislature already passed a bill prohibiting all Agenda 21 activities in Missouri with a veto-proof majority. The problem is that it will not take effect until August or September and contains no retroactivity. So, we have a 6-month window of opposition which closes in early July. Our rights are being trampled upon under the 5th and 10th Amendment. Now, local governments are required to take action. We're confident that you will help preserve our constitutional rights. That's why you were elected. In Missouri, we will ask each of the 21 county commissions to pass a resolution to enumerate the violations of the federal law by unelected officials who bypassed our elected representatives at all levels in an attempt to usurp the rights of the state of Missouri and violate the property rights of landowners. State the intention to continue present conservation practices as is mandated by laws that are consistent with historic and balanced provisions of the Constitution of the state of Missouri, and will therefore neither recognize, cooperate, participate, or partner with, nor submit to any so-called Blueway designs of any type or kind due to the violations of federal law noted above. This is the county resolution. It can be tailored to any one of the counties in the 21 counties in southern Missouri that are affected by this. In red, we highlight only 2 congressional delegates were present in the White Watershed meeting or news release, neither one of which were from Missouri. Representative Billy Long and Vicki Hartzler were not present at the ceremony. All conservation programs are to be balanced with equal protection of the customs, cultures, and economics of the areas conserved or preserved. Yet the Memorandum of Understanding contract plainly lists this cultural preservation and sustainable economic opportunities for only to the extent compatible with agency missions, goals, and objectives. To conserve and preserve the entire watershed, including working lands and waters. Working lands and waters were never defined in this memorandum. Affected counties in Missouri were neither informed, notified, or invited to participate in the Blueway process as is required by federal law. Violation of federal law by federal agencies, plus their failure to fulfill federal law requirements to inform, include, and involve county officials in all plans and proceedings, in our understanding thereby nullifies and voids all their bureaucratic attempts and efforts which have taken place up to this present time. The general list of participants in this ill-conceived Blueway attempt is so reminiscent of and similar to the now infamous effort of 1996, the Man in the Biosphere, which had the same goals, objectives, and strategies as the Blueway system. Be it therefore resolved that each county has every intention to continue present conservation practices as is mandated by laws that are consistent with historic and balanced provisions of the Constitution of the State of Missouri, and will therefore neither recognize, cooperate, participate, or partner with, nor submit to any so-called Blueway designs of any type or kind due to the violations of federal law noted above. Each county calls on the Governor Nixon to demand with immediate withdrawal of the Missouri Department of Conservation from participation in or support of the White River Watershed National Blueway. Also calls on U.S. congressional delegation to demand immediate withdrawal of federal agencies from imposing a national Blueway system of any type or kind upon White River Watershed, and to refrain from entering into a memorandum of understanding for any purpose not in the future or pertaining to lands, air, water, etc. of Missouri unless county governments have been fully informed, involved, and consulted, and have agreed to do so based on widespread local support from the public and private sectors. And also call on our congressional delegates to take special care in the framework, to prevent any attempt of any similar MOU contract in Missouri ever again.